courts. There's a couple that don't follow them, but majority of them follow the same rules. So once you know the rules, you're pretty much
Yeah, so once you pass the bar
in one state,
then you're good.
yeah. And there's some of the states that have actual reciprocity. California is example.
Oh, okay.
Colorado.
With Arizona?
Yeah. So that if you're admitted in Arizona, then you can automatically practice in some of those other states.
Mhm.
Well, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed, once I started specializing in truck accidents, I started getting referrals all over the Southwest.
Oh,
Hey guys, we're live.
we are.
Yeah, hi.
It's nice to be alive with you.
It is nice to be alive. So I can't see anything. This is the first time of live streaming, but we're here with Carl and Ron, who have been interviewed before. And so Carl had an idea. And well, before we start, just for anybody new, just a quick rundown of just a little bit of your background. If you grew up in one place or if you traveled all over, where you grew up, your relationship history, married, not married, how long single, and retirement, how long you've been retired, and yeah, that's a good start.
Wow.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't remember all of that. Let's see.
Well, okay, that's the
Okay.
first thing about the death decade.
Yeah,
Right?
the memory goes. It's right after the legs, the memory. I grew up all over because my dad was in the military. I had a variety of jobs and never a career. My whole purpose in life was to get where I'm at today. And I managed to do that, so I'm quite happy about it. I was married. I have one wonderful son, 3 granddaughters, and a lot of ex-relationships. I don't know what else to say.
That's good.
Okay.
So somebody can relate with some of that.
So I probably can relate with a lot of that.
Right. All right, Ron?
I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and didn't like the place and left 2 weeks after I was born. Moved back to live with my grandmother in Mesa, Arizona, and lived with her off and on all the way through high school and graduating from high school. My stepfather was in the Marine Corps, so I went to certain places with him, but he and I didn't get along. So I invariably would come back to my grandmother's. She raised me, and I started college at NAU and wasn't committed to what I was doing and ended up getting expelled and all that good stuff. And so I ended up going in the Army at the recommendation of a judge. He was kind enough to give me a choice, either that or the county jail. And I thought, I will try the Army, why not? Besides, I'd eaten a meal in the county jail and it was terrible.
Yeah.
And I told the judge that. So I went in the Army and was in the Army for 2 years over in Europe, mostly in Germany, and ended up getting into a job that involved the legal department in the Army. And it was the first time that I was on the right side of the law. I had been on the wrong side more than once.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved what I was doing. My job was to help officers learn how to try a case. And I had gone to school for that. The Army sent me to a school.
Oh, wow.
So it was awesome. I knew within a matter of a few months that that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my career and the rest of my professional life.
Yeah.
So the moment I got out of the Army, with the help of the GI Bill, I finished college in 2 years and then went to law school for 3. And at the end of the 5 years, I worked in Phoenix for a big firm, kind of an internship, and then went to Flagstaff and opened my own office.
Wow.
Stayed there until I made my decision to retire early. And I was about halfway into my career when I made that decision. And age 52 is what I set as my retirement age. And that's when I retired and started doing all the bucket list stuff that I have talked about before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. I'm not going to keep going back and well, I might be able to.
You don't know what you're doing.
No, I have no idea what I'm doing. This is a trial
It's
run
okay.
here.
Like I said, this is a rather we're having
just
a
gonna-
conversation.
We're just going to wing it, but I don't think that, oh, look at, I'm going into the picture.
This is the first effort.
It is a first effort. So, all
So
right.
what about you? You have to contribute.
Oh, I tell them all the time
Oh,
about me.
they already know about
They
you.
know. That's why they're here, if they're here. So, and then we have Kissy. We can see her in the picture too.
Kissy's being very good.
Okay,
Yes.
so we're
She's
talking
paying
about.
attention.
Yep, she's got her blanket, so she's good. So we're talking about the death decade. Carl, that was Carl's idea. So
Well,
tell
it was
us.
my idea because I was looking at, I play around the internet a lot and go through Firefox and go through a lot of internet searches. And I came across this thing that said in 1950, 8% of the people in the United States were 65 and older.
In 1950.
So in 2022, 17 or almost 18% were 65 and older. So I thought, oh yeah, we're getting better. And then a little bit further on, it said there are 1.9 million people in the United States are over the age or 90 or older. I said, that's a pretty big number. So I divided that by the population. It turns out that that is 1/2 of 1% of the population is over. I mean, it's almost 2 million seems like a pretty good number.
Right.
But there's 350 million people in the country. So
it's 1/2 of
1%, 0.005. That's,
and when you get to 79 or 80, what's the percentage?
I couldn't find that.
Oh, you couldn't?
I couldn't
Oh.
find that. So from 65, from 17% to 0.5% in whatever that is, 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to 80, you're 2/3 of the way through that.
Right.
Yeah.
So you start
Right.
to think about it, and it's not that for me anyway. This is all personal thing. Everybody has to do it for themselves. You just sit down and say, well, what do I think about this? Well, for one thing, I'm happy to get up in the morning. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to look
You
at
know?
it.
My mantra has always been: any day you look at the grass from the green side, it's a good day.
That's right. And we were just saying something at lunch today about how all your friends are dying, because I was reading some things getting ready for this, and that was one of the things on people's mind at this time. So is a few other things I'll point out. But what did you say? You
Well,
said-
not only all your friends are dying, but all your enemies are dying also.
I
love that.
So you just hope it's weighted more towards the
you do.
enemies than the friends. Got a couple friends left, but all
I
your
love
enemies are
that.
gone. Yeah, it's well, I mean, the three of us have, me not so much, but you guys have had some serious health scares.
Oh, you not so much.
Well,
Says the man who almost died in his driveway.
yeah, well, that's true. But that
Oh,
didn't
that was-
last very long. Yeah, well, I fell in the ice and broke my hip, and it took me 45 minutes to drag my dead ass into the house from the driveway,
Ooh.
through the ice and snow. And I honestly, I just went out to get something out of my car. So I had a shirt on and a pair of, pajama bottoms, and bang. So I was frozen.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you were
my.
already bundled up.
No. And so I was hypothermic and all kinds of stuff. And I was laying there in the driveway about halfway up. And I said, I can't do this. This is just because my hip was broken. I was hurting. I was shaking like a leaf. I had hypothermia. And I said, I don't think I could do this. And I looked around and said, shit, man, if you don't do this, you're going to die right
You're
here
gonna die.
today. I said, okay, I'm not ready for that. So I just finally made it in and called 911, and they busted in the door and drug me out of there. And so it was good.
Right.
But yeah, that's a health scare.
Right. That's a health scare.
A stent in your heart's a health scare.
Right.
A major heart attack and quadruple or double or
Triple
bypass.
triple bypass, and then a new cow valve.
Wow. Oh yeah, I didn't know you had that too. I mean, that's rebuilding your heart.
That's
And then
exactly what it did.
Yeah. So we've all, it's not just the after 80 thing, it's the thing of looking our possible demise in the face,
Yes.
and somehow dealing with it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
So-
true.
So,
In addition to your heart rebuild, you had a lot of complications. You had pneumonia in the hospital, so
Yeah.
you almost died. And then you had a visitor at your house who threatened your life.
The what?
The visitor who threatened your life.
a bear?
Oh, the bear? That was way before I had the heart attack.
Oh, okay.
That was
Well, share some about the heart attack.
You dealt with that a long time ago, huh?
That's a health threat too. Tell us about the bear and the heart
bear,
attack.
We frequently had bears around our house. Our house is right on the river, the Florida River, and it's attractive to bears. So I was kind of used to seeing them around there.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard one out on the porch, and so I got out some pans and started banging them, and usually they leave. And I went around and looked out the back door, which is a screened door, and the bear was walking around the corner, leaving. So I was happy. And I had gotten down my 22. That's the only rifle I had that wasn't locked up. Everything else was locked up. And I got the 22 down. I was just going to shoot it if I needed to, not at the bear, but just make noise. And I started walking back towards the kitchen, and all of a sudden I heard this rip of material, and I looked back, and the bear was crawling through the screen door and was already halfway through it. And the bottom part of the door was wood, the top part was screen. And he was coming in the house because we had salmon that evening, and he liked salmon.
He knew.
So all I could do was, the gun was down here, the rifle, and I just pulled the trigger, hoping the noise would scare him or something. And I actually hit him in the head, and he went back, and then he kind of slumped down on the outside of the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I went around and put a couple of more in him to make sure he wasn't going to get up. And then I called Game and Fish. It turns out they were trying to trap him because he had broken into some houses upstream from my house, and it actually broke into one house that there was a lady inside the house when he broke in.
Ugh.
So the Game and Fish was trying to get him. Well, it turned out he had a predator tag already on him from New Mexico, which means he had been trapped in New Mexico and then moved somewhere where he could come down the Florida drainage and come right to my house.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
anyway, I tried to get the Game and Fish to let me have the hide to make a rug, and they wouldn't do it. They said, "No, we'll fix your door." I said, "I'll fix my own door. Just let me have the hide." But they wouldn't do it. They said we were afraid that if word got out, people would start shooting and claiming self-defense.
oh,
They knew that I had blood all over me from the nails and stuff that were in the floor from the door jamb
Oh,
itself.
wow.
Yeah, he'd torn. I mean, he made a mess.
Mm.
so was that first shot then a very lucky shot?
It was a totally lucky shot.
Where did
I
you
mean,
hit it?
God was on my side
Yeah.
because I was like this. You can't hit anything.
No.
I wasn't really trying to hit him in the head. I was just trying to scare him. The noise is what I hoped would scare him.
Yeah.
But I didn't give him an opportunity to be as scared.
You got lucky
Just
and
got
put
lucky
him
and
down,
got-
huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, there's a story for you.
Yeah,
Right.
it was quite a story.
See?
That's
That was several years before.
yeah. Well, there's one on the thing of lucky to be alive.
Lucky
Right,
to be alive.
right.
Yeah, you could have shot some of those bears and that ricocheted off the top of his head and just really pissed
Yeah.
him off.
Mhm.
You know, boom.
You know, what's really funny is there was a spokesman from the Game and Fish Department that gave a lecture at the university in one of their big halls. And I went to that with some friends. And what the guy was recommending, if a bear came in your house, he said, just open up the doors and let him do his thing and you leave through another door. And I just said, whoa, wait a minute. You telling me to let the bear come on in and have at my house?
Yeah.
And I've got a wife that was sleeping in bed.
Oh,
The little
no, yeah.
dog was there.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff.
Wow.
He said, well, there's exceptions to the rule, but
Well, you're an
the
exception.
rule
Always.
is let the bear do what it's going
Yeah,
to do.
right. You've always been an
Yeah,
exception.
if it's your house, I'll let him do it, but not my house.
I read a story about bears about a lady, and I don't know, she lived in North Durango or somewhere around there. She had been feeding bears.
Hmm.
They'd come in her backyard and she'd go out and feed them. Well, one day she didn't have any food. So guess what they did? They came in and I mean, she didn't survive.
Oh,
But,
wow.
I mean, that's
Stupid.
stupid. Yeah, it's not even dumb. It's stupid. I mean, I guess they think they're big teddy bears or something, but they're wild animals and they're big and
They're
strong.
total wild animals.
Mm.
And that once they get comfortable with humans, they're totally comfortable.
Yeah, and they got no fear. They got no
No
nothing, and they can look at you and say, "Shit, I'm bigger than you are.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do what I want to do."
Right.
Exactly.
Get out of my way.
Wow.
So lots of ways to die. Glad you're here at
Thank you.
the beginning of the death decade. Just
Yeah.
Time to go.
So I just Stan Hayward. I looked at some of his comments. He wrote an article on Quora. I'm just quoting him, so I just want to give him credit. So, but he talks about, I'm really old and I know death is imminent. Most of my friends have passed away, and of those remaining, they suffer from health problems. Some of the other things, I live by myself. Today, if the weather is fine, I will go for a walk. I will chat with my friends. I will do shopping. I will do my laundry. I'll feed my cat. I will tidy up what needs to be done. I'll do all the things that people do who are not old and know that death is imminent, because there is no feeling of being old.
Hmm.
I kind of like that. I mean, he goes on, but no feeling of being old and, your friends going. So talk about that because I have some friends going, but, every year it's more and more and more.
Yeah, I don't think any of us particularly feel old. Every day we look in the mirror, we know we are old. But mentally, I feel I'm about 58.
That's interesting because I was going to say in my 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel, I mean, I have to remind myself that I just turned 81.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm 81, but I am.
Well, and then we have some diminished physical capabilities,
Mm-hmm.
but not mental.
No,
And
you just feel the
our
same.
interests are the same. We
Right.
modify them somewhat because some things we were interested in we can't do anymore. But we all feel good.
Right.
I mean, I don't get up and think about, well, God, I got one more day down. How many more days do I have? I don't think about that.
No, I
Right.
don't either. And basically, you and I do this a lot, but we have a lot of things we do. And I think the more things you do, the better it is because part of it is you're keeping your body in shape,
Yeah.
by doing, like I have a set of exercises that
Yeah.
the therapists have given me. And I do those every morning and they take about an hour. And so I start my day off with exercise. And then I go play pool. 3 days a week, I go play pool, have lunch, visit with friends. 1 day a week, I play poker with the same group I've been playing with for 25 years. I don't have a lot of downtime, and I love to read. So my evenings are not watching TV, they're reading.
Yeah.
I kept track of the number of books I had read when I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital for 2.5 months, and I read 42 books, novels.
Yeah. That's so what's that? 40 books in what, 70 days. So it's
Something like that.
damn near every other day. Yeah, you were reading a lot.
I was reading a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I'm there.
Yeah.
Right.
I might as well be doing something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, rather than stewing.
I think that making a really good point about you keep moving because just that little, I do the laundry, I go for a walk, I feed my cat. When you get in that routine and you're in your house, you have to get out. You have to get out and socialize. You have to find things to do.
Absolutely.
So
Otherwise,
are there ever
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, are there ever days otherwise that's where I was going. Otherwise you start
feeling old because you're acting old. I may be old relatively, but I don't act that way. I probably act more like a kid more than I used to.
Do you think going to some place like the senior center and being around older people than you affects you in any way?
I don't personally think so. I don't see myself saying that person's older than me, therefore. I don't ever get into that position. I have friends that might be older, might not be. I don't know. I never really ask about their age. I know one of the guys we play pool with is older than me.
Yeah.
And probably the majority of the other
all
guys
the rest of them
are younger.
Than you.
Yeah.
And they don't, in your conversations, a lot of people have the impression that, a senior center means you're talking about your medications and your doctors and your aches and your pains all the time.
That's not the case.
Because you're not out on the golf course.
Well, those guys at a golf course probably talk about their medications more than we do. All we talk about is, we're just joking all the time and laughing with one another. And when we play pool, we're saying, well, that was a sort of good shot. Yeah, try harder next time. So it's just, the same crap that we were doing when we were 35, you know?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly the same.
There's
Right.
no difference. There's no difference.
And if we were sitting in our houses at 35, we'd be feeling old and lonely too.
Well,
Well, if we weren't doing anything,
weren't,
that's
but
exactly right.
It was just easier to get out and do things
Oh,
then. Now
absolutely.
it's a little more of an
yeah,
effort.
if I sit in my house at 35, I'd probably be drinking. And that's probably not a real good thing.
No, that's
No.
And a lot of that drinking was because I didn't have anything else to do. And I haven't figured out anything else to do, but I didn't know how to drink.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. And a lot of people are doing that, older people.
I read that in the art magazine. You were talking about that alcoholism is really difficult and rampant in the older folks.
Oh, really?
You know, and I don't drink and haven't in 40 some years, but I have friends that drink a lot and they sit around and do it. I mean,
And they don't think of it.
there's nothing going on
But
except they're
there's-
just drinking.
Right. There's no schedule, so you can, it's 5 o'clock somewhere
yeah.
Well, and
all the
that's-
time.
And what they're pointing out in that article on the art magazine, was how bad it is for your health,
Yes.
how
Mhm.
terrible it is, particularly as you get older, because your body doesn't process the alcohol like it did when you were younger.
Mm.
So it's very difficult for
And the
older
cognitive
folks.
health, too.
They what?
Cognitively.
Oh, absolutely.
I still, this is primarily because of Facebook, but, and there's a lot of friends I have from high school and college that I still keep up with. And there's a couple guys that I talk on the phone every 4 or 5 days
Mhm.
from back then. And there's one guy I avoid because he's an alcoholic and he's 79 years old and he just won't quit drinking. And you can tell it in the conversations.
Mhm.
He forgets stuff. And he forgets it from the beginning of the conversation to the end of
Oh,
the
boy.
conversation. You know, so he's got a real problem, but he won't admit it. He'll just keep going.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But he came from an alcoholic family, so that's what he knew how to do.
And that's where you learn it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Frequently, not always, but that's where you learn it frequently is from your upraising.
Yeah. Well, when I was in high school, my dad was stationed in England, and my dad was the detachment commander. So we would have people over, and we would go over to their people's house for dinner. And when I was 15 years old, those people fixed my dad a drink. They fixed me a drink.
Whoa.
So I was drinking whiskey at 15. And then I kept going and drinking it in high school because when I was at a boarding school.
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, it was free reign down there. But yeah, I mean, it's a serious thing. I know what you mean.
Oh, it is.
And you read about it all the time. And a lot of it's because of loneliness and not being connected and that kind of thing. But for crying out loud, you're responsible for your own life. You know, we could do that, but that's not what we want to do.
I couldn't do it.
No, I couldn't do it
I
now.
just, I mean, if I didn't have friends, and I'm the same way, I've got 3 or 4 that I carry on conversations with even today
Yeah,
that I went to high school with,
Yeah.
or fraternity brothers from college, and a lot of them we talk frequently. And they're doing the same thing that I'm doing. They're broadening their horizons. They're doing things. Some of them are in their bucket lists, same as I did. My bucket list got longer after I retired. I kept adding stuff to it, and then I'd go do it.
Yeah.
And then I'd
Yeah.
say, now I'm done.
well, you're fortunate to be able to do that.
Well, I'm very fortunate that I
Yes.
had the financial ability to travel the way I did.
Yeah, and do what you actually wanted to do.
Do exactly what I wanted
Well,
to do.
you know, from what you said, here's one thing that I've seen. You have to be open to new things. You
Exactly.
don't have to jump into a whole lot of new stuff. but you can't be closed off. You
Mhm.
know, you need to be somewhat, and it's that way with meeting new people too. If you meet somebody and they're approximately your own age, they've had a life that brought them there, and you've had a life that brought you there. And if you're open, maybe you can learn something from them and they can learn something from you, and you might find some common ground.
That's a very good point.
A lot of people are not open, you know, and they're the ones that sit around in their house and complain about it. And that's the grumpy old man in the neighborhood.
That's
That
exactly
guy
right.
that is not open, because nothing, it wasn't like it was in 1949. Damn
Therefore,
it, it's no good anymore.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so
It's true.
There's a lot of that.
yeah, there is. And
Mhm.
I think those are the grumpy people.
Yeah.
It's not just men, there's grumpy old ladies.
Oh
too.
yeah, there's
You
grumpy
know?
old ladies. Yeah,
That,
they just don't want to change anything, and you
No.
have to be flexible. And then you just end up complaining about everything,
Yeah, that's
Instead
exactly right.
and that just makes you bitter and
yeah.
older faster.
Well, the wheel keeps turning. And if you stand on the side of the road and watch the wheel turn, pretty soon it's going to get to the point that you don't recognize anything anymore. You know, it's
Mhm.
turned totally away from you. So I think that, I mean, you don't have to be at the leading edge, but you need to at least try to keep aware of what's going on and figure out how you're personally going to deal with those things. Because, you know, well, I mean, because your daughter and son-in-law still live close to you.
Yep.
And you know, there's a generation difference there, and their life is not what your life was,
Mhm.
but you're still connected to.
Oh, sure.
And it's more than just duty to dad. I mean, there's a real thing there.
Yeah.
And with my son too. You know, I talk to him all the time, and he's going through stuff that I never went through. But we still have a connection. And you know, I think it's good to be, if you can find some younger people that you can talk to, that's kind of fun. But a lot of them don't want to talk to old folks because they don't think we have anything to talk about.
Yeah.
Right,
That's probably true
right.
that they feel that way, but I don't let that stop me.
No, me either. I always give them bad
If I
time.
want to talk to somebody, I start talking
That's
to them.
right.
And invariably, once you start, like you're saying, you open your mind to it, and there's all kinds of information can be exchanged.
Sure.
Mhm.
Interesting information.
Yes.
People, and just even like what we're doing here. You know, I mean, I knew you before, obviously, but I didn't know you.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew
Mhm.
you, but now I do. And
Right.
I have a tremendous respect for you and an affection. You know, you're a nice lady.
But that's the way I feel about you too.
Oh, good.
You've just been so you just put in these little quips here and there in our conversations, and just getting to know you. Now we have a connection and
Mhm.
affection and a larger community.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, like at our age, I think a lot of people don't want to be our age, and they look at other older people the same way that younger people look at older people.
Mm.
Like, oh, you don't have anything to say, or we aren't going to have anything in common, but we really have quite a bit in common
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, you know, or we can find things to talk about that are interesting to both
Totally.
of us. And that's one of the things that I think older people don't do. You know, they don't want to talk to people outside of their circle. They don't, I don't know if it's a fear or the word discrimination. Just on looks. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like-
yeah. Well, I think it's too much work for most people. And it requires, if you and I have a conversation, or Ron and I are gonna have a conversation, to have a good one, it requires that he's open to a degree and I'm open to a degree.
Mhm.
Because he got where he's at and I got where I at on totally different paths. So we don't have that type of similarity in our background, but we've all had decisions that were very hard to make, and we made them,
Mhm.
and we've all made the wrong decisions, and we've made the right ones, and we got here. And if you talk to somebody long enough, we started talking over playing pool,
Mhm.
because we had that,
Mhm.
and then
Right.
things would come up, and it's not that things would come up when you're playing pool, and then you'd say something that was just a comment or off the hand comment that somebody else would pick up on, and they started talking.
Right.
Right.
You make a really good point. Something that I read that I didn't think about, and mostly it was associated with dating after 50, but it applies to everything because we used to just live in the same neighborhood forever. Our parents lived in the
Yeah,
same neighborhood
exactly.
forever. So you knew everybody, and there was a commonality in the customs and who knew who. You kind of, even if you were on the outskirts of that, you still knew somebody who could connect you. And or you had a familiarity with the same area of town, that you both lived in. And now people come from all over the place and so many different walks of life. And so you have to be open to that too,
Mhm.
because somebody who has, for example, when I tell people how many times I moved when I was a kid, I was at a different school every 2 years, and they say, "Oh, military," and I say, "No, we just moved a lot." My dad said it was because of job opportunities, and my mom said because he was having affairs and he didn't want to get caught. I don't know which way it is, but it's a different experience even than you who moved around just like I did. But in military circles, you still have some sort of commonality
Mhm.
with those people where I didn't have.
Sometimes you're right. Sometimes you do. My dad we never lived on base.
Okay.
Everywhere we went, we lived off base. So the experience was just like yours. You're always a new kid.
Okay.
You're always trying to become somewhat accepted. By the time you almost get there, you're going away again.
Yeah.
So, but see, that's even different than somebody who lived on base. So even if you say you're a military, I mean, that's a commonality, but you could be from two different experiences in the military, on base or growing up off base. And so there's a lot to overcome. You have to spend some time to find some kind of commonality, where in the old days, you'd say, "Oh yeah, I live on 20th and Maple Street," and "Oh yeah, I know where that is. My cousin lives next to you," or there would be some kind of connection that you could start from. Now we're just starting from, "Hi, you look older than me. You're pretty quiet." It's like, I don't know if I want to get to know you or not.
Yeah.
And then for a long time, we saw each other and never knew anything about each other. So, I mean, for a long time, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
So it takes time. So don't be in a hurry.
Yeah.
Just what else do you have to do?
It takes
right?
effort too.
It does
takes
take effort.
Nothing's magic. And
Right.
you have to put yourself out there. And a lot of people are reluctant to put themselves out there because even at this age, you don't want to get rejected.
No.
So you just put yourself out there. If people don't respond, there's always somebody
There's
else.
somebody else, right? And yeah.
Well, excuse me. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The one thing too that's kind of lacking, and I'm glad at our group or age group, is there's no pecking order.
No.
And there was when I was growing up. There was always a pecking order.
Yeah.
Oh.
I might have been one time I might have been at the head of it, and the next time I might have been at the bottom of it. But there was a pecking order. And
Yeah,
that's pretty much gone now, I
I
think.
think so too.
I don't feel that way when,
Mhm.
Well, and then the other thing is, Ron, we won't stand for that anymore.
well, that's true. That's exactly
You know,
right.
If we go to a situation where we perceive that there's a pecking order, we just don't, we won't stand for it. We'll go somewhere else. Because
Exactly.
if there's something like that going on, it's not worth our time.
Mhm.
Well, it's not. And a good example of what I'm saying is just like today, we had some people sitting at the table that had sat with us before.
Mhm.
And that one fellow, Joe,
Yeah,
talked about that he had seen the film and which surprised me. Couldn't believe he'd actually watched it, and how he even knew about it. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, he knew about my channel. I didn't hear that he watched it.
Yeah, he said he watched it and he learned a lot. He said he watched mine and he'd learned a lot about me that he had never known before. And I'm sure that that's true. There was some things we talked about that
Right.
I'd never shared in open. I've shared, Carl probably knows about it or
Right.
some other friend.
That's
Right.
the magic of YouTube.
yeah, the magic.
Now
of
you made
YouTube.
a connection,
Well,
another
oh, yeah.
connection,
Well,
you know.
Dave, the taller guy that's
Yeah,
sitting
right.
next to him, he has watched yours and he's watched mine and he watched Terry's and he watched some of what, because he just, it's some ways of maybe getting information without having to answer the questions and trying to
Yeah.
draw it out.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's no, I think it's great. I think one of the things that I see in getting older is you do recognize that you only have a certain amount of time. You do recognize that you've done a lot to get where you're at. If you're comfortable with yourself, you don't need to prove anything to anybody.
No.
And if you get into a situation where you feel something like that, you just walk away.
Mhm.
You say,
Good point.
you
That's
know,
exactly what you do.
yeah, you do.
I don't need this.
I don't need this. What do I need this for?
I got plenty of friends over there. I don't need to mess around with you.
Yeah,
Right.
trying to impress you or
Right.
or you
Exactly.
trying to impress me. It's, I mean,
Or
with us, with all of us, it's one-on-one, bang, 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 and it's who we are
It's the
when
way
we
it
are
is.
today.
Today,
That's interesting because you may remember me talking about this the other day, but the fact that I almost never bring up my profession.
Mm-hmm.
I don't talk to people about it.
I talk to you about it.
You
That's
talk
the only
to me
time that
about
you
it.
talk about it.
But
is when
I don't talk about it like when I used to play golf avidly.
Mhm.
I'd play golf with a new group and I'd never even tell them what I did. Partly because I don't like the controversy and partly because I don't like to have to give out legal advice constantly while I'm trying to relax.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't have to worry about that anymore because my competency in legal stuff is very minimal.
Well, I've told people down there before that, because they know what your background is. And I said, if maybe you can get Ron to give you advice on how to find legal advice, but do not ask Ron for legal advice because he's been retired damn near 30 years. And he's not going to expose himself to you taking his advice and getting your ass in trouble.
Exactly.
Because who wants to do that?
That's exactly right.
And I mean, you ask an accountant for legal advice, and they say, well, go get QuickBooks. What the hell?
Right. And talking about, shoot, I lost it. What were you just saying? You were just talking about
Professions and
people.
You're not doing your job, Alexis.
I'm not. You were
where's your script? Come on.
It's over there. I'm trying to figure out how this all works because somehow that camera is connected to that. I don't know. So I'm talking about, oh, we're just who we are today at this very moment.
Yeah.
And another thing is a lot of people get hung up on differences of opinion, trying to change people's mind or trying to convince people that they're right or trying to fix somebody. You know, you don't seem to have any need to do that either.
Well, I can tell you one thing, between Ron and I, or between all the guys that we play pool with, we actually have conversations. We just talk. We don't have, I mean, I listen to what he says. He listens to what I listen to what everybody says and respond to what. I don't listen to the first 4 words and form in my mind an argument to come back to make them believe to what I believe. Because I respect everybody's opinion. I don't necessarily have that opinion, but I certainly give them, they're entitled to it as much as I'm entitled to mine. We don't argue. There's just
No, we don't.
There's no percentage, there's no payday in arguing with people.
And there's no discrimination about based around what your opinions are as far as whatever's going on in this crazy country. You don't have any of that. Do you?
Well, we really don't get into that either.
We, I think we've made sure that we don't take on battles that are unnecessary.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you're alluding to is not being willing to listen to someone else's opinion. If you don't agree with it, so what? Listen to it. There may be something in there that changes your mind, but at the very least, it's that person's opinion.
Yeah.
And they're entitled to have it.
And that's a level of respect that if you give somebody that level of respect to listen to them, hopefully they will give the same thing to you, and then you have a acquaintanceship or whatever. You have something that is based on respect of one another, and that can grow. There's other things, they don't grow,
No.
Yeah.
See?
I mean, I think it's really important to be able to give a person a level of respect that they deserve for getting from where they started to where they are. And all the shit that they've gone through to get there, and all the stuff I've gone through to get here, and what he's gone through and what you've gone through. We've all gone through a lot of different stuff to get where we're at, and we're still smiling. So what the hell? It's okay.
Well, and we still listen.
Yeah.
I think there's, when I used to teach at the trial college for the State Bar of Arizona, one of the things I would teach young lawyers that were getting ready to start practicing, I'd teach them, you have to learn to listen. That's the most critical thing in a legal representation, is learning to listen to your client. And it's also true on just like where we are. You sit down there at lunch and you got 9 people at the table. Every one of them has got an opinion about something.
Yeah.
And every one of them has information that I would like to have.
Yeah.
Or at least I don't know about it, so I would like to have it.
There's always, I mean, and we have such varied backgrounds that it's fun to see what people's opinions are based on those backgrounds. Not that they talk about their background, but their background helps form that opinion.
Right.
And so their opinions reflect pieces of information that we may not have because we don't have that background.
Yeah.
And like you said, if you're open to it, you may sit there and say, oh, I never thought about that before. Well, so how does that influence what I already thought?
Yep.
So that's cool. I like it.
You got to have an open mind about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, about anything.
There's so much information that I don't have right now.
Yeah.
That somebody else can share with me.
Well, see, the other thing about our conversations, none of our conversations are based on dogma. You know, they're based on our opinion at that time about what we're talking about. And it's a lot of times it's well thought out, sometimes it isn't too thought out, but it's there. It's not based on somebody other's bullshit that they give us.
Yeah.
And following the company line. That's one of my problems my whole life is I've never followed the company line.
Well, that's understandable.
You figured that out, did you?
I think it's great. I did the same thing, but I finally had to settle down at one point. Before I retired, I had to settle down.
Yeah? And how do you mean that?
How do you do that? Well, you just look in a mirror and say, okay, we need to change certain behaviors. You know, and alcohol was one of them.
Well, yeah.
Cigarette smoking was one
Yeah.
of them. But also my personality had to start toning down too. Because when I was practicing, I was fairly aggressive. I was renowned as being kind of aggressive, too aggressive sometimes. But it got what I wanted for my clients.
Yeah.
You can't take that attitude into life because you can't go around beating up people on
No.
behalf of a client.
Yeah.
Right.
No, you're right. You're
A
right.
lot of clients want a hired gun and that's all they want. And sometimes I would give them that. But usually I wouldn't. Usually I'd say, here's the merit of this particular argument, and here's why we're not going to do that.
Well, in a court of law, you're being aggressive for your client, either in front of a judge or a jury, and they are the moderator.
That's right.
After you retire, you're being aggressive, and the person you're being aggressive to is the moderator.
Exactly right. Good point.
And they say, right, I don't think that's proper.
Unfortunately, those were situations I would get right back in the middle of it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was not one of my better qualities. I had a temper.
Well, you lived through that.
Yeah.
So-
But that, you know, I think we all have a temper earlier that mellows with time. I think that's just a common thing.
My daughter, I got a cute story that my middle daughter said to me one time. She was aware that I used to get a lot of fights when I was younger, fist fights, and she said one time she'd come up to me. She says, "Dad, looking at your face and all the scars, you must have been really tough." And I said, "No, the tough ones were the ones that put the scars there.
Yeah.
Not the guy that got the scars.
Yeah, exactly.
The broken nose was from the guy that hit me, not because I walked into a wall." You know?
Right. So.
Yeah, I had to tone that down a bunch. I still do. Sometimes I get a little bit hostile.
Yeah, it's okay though.
But you know, I mean, you can catch it right away.
I do.
Now, that's one thing we get quicker at.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
but
You
like-
learn how to say, "I'm sorry."
Yes.
We
And
real
you learn
quick.
how to keep your mouth shut.
And you learn how to keep your mouth shut.
Yes, and I'm sorry real quick. You're
Yeah.
exactly right.
And a lot of
Yeah.
times at this stage of your life, when you jump out there, it's for a reason. That somebody's pushed you to the point that, okay, I'll take your shit for a while. And after
Right.
that, and then you just go over that line, and then you gotta cut them off.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do something. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah, they gotta stop.
You have to set
Right.
a boundary with certain people.
Yeah.
Right.
Most people that we come in contact with, we don't have to set boundaries with them. They're
Right.
good people. They got good ideas,
Yeah.
all that. But there are a few out there that you've got to set a boundary with, and you got to enforce that boundary.
Yeah, because they'll take advantage of
They'll
you.
totally
Right.
take advantage of
And
it.
then you won't like anybody.
Well, but
You won't make
the worst
friends
part
that way.
about
That's
it is you won't like yourself. If you let yourself being taken advantage of, then you feel worse about yourself.
You're going to have a big resentment of that
Yeah.
person, and it's going to come out sideways. Sure as
Yeah,
heck.
it is. Sideways is right. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what has this got to do with the death?
Well, we're almost, I know. We're almost at an hour and we haven't. So we haven't talked much about the decade, but
Well, I mean,
this is a trial run on.
well, it's a conversation too. We've
Right.
talked about some good stuff.
We
We
have.
had fun.
So I hope you enjoyed it. And we're going to wrap it up because it's the first one and I have no idea how to post this thing or.
Well,
What's
here's
gonna
the
happen
deal.
next?
If anybody watches this and they have specific things that they have thought about themselves about getting older and facing the end of days, throw them out.
Put them in the comments.
Put them in the comments. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
That's right.
'Cause
Yeah. Let's join a
as you can tell
conversation.
by this conversation, we all got something to say.
And we want you to join us. Thanks for watching. Bye.
It's always fun, just sit around and